I'll just say former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. On the southern border, speaking to the issue of illegal aliens, children. She's a very compassionate woman. Roll it.
He has reinforced the idea that anyone who comes here sees that this is a community with a border going through it. And this crisis, that some call a crisis, we have to view as an opportunity. I'm a mother of 5. I have 9 grandchildren. I wish that I could take all those children home with me. I don't know if it's what the rules about it are, that I wish that you could all see what we saw today and what Congressman Vela and Congressman Hinojosa saw yesterday in McAllen. Perhaps the most tragic image I will take home with me, and I wish I could take him too, was the little boy who was infected with the virus and then in isolation, all by himself. But that's for his safety and for the safety of others. Nonetheless, we have to address the 3 points that Congressman Vela made, and one of them is to work with our Central American neighbors, to be good neighbors. We're all Americans in this hemisphere, North and South America, to work together to improve the situation in those countries so that the danger is not so keen. To be careful about the trafficking issue, which is of a concern to all of us wherever it happens in the world. And on our border, our responsibility to do so in a way that is in the best interest of the children.
That's what it's about, everybody. It's about the children, and we're a community, and we can all get along. Actually, we're a nation of laws, and you've forgotten that, and it's destroying our country. I'm not being hyperbolic. That's a reality. That's truth. That's nothing but truth. And when we speak of this, let's not forget how this began, which was the lack of enforcement of our laws, encouraging parents to send their kids on deadly, awful traveling routes that, in essence, subject them to the horrors of sex slavery, among other things, but certainly abuse. And now there's disease, and we're just, I just wish I could take you home. Powerline points out, over at Powerline, they point out that, the blog, Powerline, yes, that she has like she could take some folks with her, I'm sure. They could arrange that. I just wish I could do this. It is the childish, juvenile response to a crisis that was created by not enforcing our laws. And this is all about a greater amnesty. And if you really want to know what it's about, it's not conspiratorial. Don't put a tinfoil hat on my head. This is reality, and it's the politics that would bring in a greater welfare state than we have today. More people rely on the state. The state has more power. They elect their benefits. Less people are paying in. Greater numbers are taking out. Tipping point, electing a permanent welfare state. And that's what we're dealing with. It's not about race. It's not about anything else. It's about undermining the law. Everything that we have that we oftentimes take for granted, which is the benefits of a free society, property protections, life protections, although we could advance those big time. And we always are working on it. Foundation, rule of law. You undermine that, you're not going to get the fruits. And with that, you're not going to get the benefits. It crashes. Now, the Cloward-Piven strategy, which is to crash the whole system, overload it, and then seek radical change. We've talked about that. That could be an element here. But as long as you've got the idea that somehow amnesty, as we know it today, and the lack of enforcement of our border. Oh, and President Obama is going to take executive action to increase border security. See, you have to respond to a crisis when you create one, and the executive action will open up some things for him, because if somebody supports that, what happens? This is a great point made by somebody in the NRO today, National Review Online. Just saw a clip of it. Read a clip of it, whatever. The point is this: setting up the fact that if you support executive action here, then why don't you do it here? Because there's some strange support for this coming from the likes of pro-amnesty folks in Congress. So keep in mind, there's an overall strategy. I can't figure all of that stuff out because we really don't know about this. What we do know is you undermine the rule of law, there are consequences. You do that over a long period of time, there are consequences big time. And we are seeing those. You can't maintain freedom without having the rule of law. You just can't do it. That said, the president, in his address this past weekend, and this was a dandy of an address, by the way. This is really interesting. President speaking to, no, this is even better. This is Fareed Zakaria. Fareed Zakaria, the plagiarist, the alleged, didn't he got caught up in plagiarism over at CNN. He's a really smart guy. He's a big liberal guy, and he's a big defender of the president. Listen to this comparison, because one of the ways that we come back to the rule of law is to understand what the Tea Party has done for this country, which is taxed enough already, and that somehow limited government is analogous to Muqtada al-Sadr. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Roll it.
So why in the world is Maliki flatly refusing to do this? Partly it's because he's a hardline Shiite politician himself, whose party draws its support from the Shiites, who are not particularly well disposed to the notion of being nice to the Sunnis, their former overlords. But it's probably at least as much because Maliki needs to worry about radical Shiites as much as radical Sunnis. You see, he has his own Tea Party, and this one has an army of its own.
Okay. He's speaking about Muqtada al-Sadr, who's a brutal killer. And what happened is he's saying Maliki's facing divisions and facing a situation of where he's trying to hang on to power. He's explaining the overall context to it all. Just know this. He just compared the Tea Party to the likes of Muqtada al-Sadr, a Iranian leader. Well, he did go over there. He's a Shiite leader, but he was even too radical for the Shiites here because he's interested in a theocracy and he has American blood on his hands. He was a big problem during the war. We had to rally those against him. Personally, I wish he was dead, because then more people would be allowed to live. But now he's kind of changing things and attempting to relabel himself or redefine himself or rebrand himself as a uniter. I don't trust a thing he says, but of course we've got an administration that's taking the word of Iran. So what do you do? I'm not trying to be cynical. Here's what I'm bringing out, folks. This guy is a killer, is a radical cleric supported by Iran, American blood on his hands, and he's referred to as, the own little Tea Party in Iraq. No, there's somebody representing Tea Party would be representing more of a Jeffersonian democracy of any type. It's terribly irresponsible, but it's the constant smear that Chris Matthews spoke to, because he did it, and it happens again and again and again. Why is this? Because you must marginalize those who are making sense, and it's pretty clear that the answer to all this is limited government. Take the power away from government, do what our founders understood. Of course, we need a moral and religious people to uphold the Constitution. That's what it's fit for. Adams said that, paraphrasing rather poorly there. But point is this: you are sitting here and you're seeing how messages are communicated. Children. The Tea Party is like al-Sadr. They're radical. They're nuts. They're crazy. No, what's going on in this country, this presidency, and the policies from this presidency, they're nuts. They're also corrupt. But I digress. The president spoke this weekend about his agenda and how he is a leader, and he's not going to go into name calling or partisanship. It's really cool. Roll it.
The problem is, Republicans in Congress keep blocking or voting down almost every serious idea to strengthen the middle class. This year alone, they've said no to raising the minimum wage, no to fair pay, no to student loan reform, no to extending unemployment insurance. And rather than invest in education that helps working families get ahead, they actually voted to give another massive tax cut to the wealthiest Americans. This obstruction keeps the system rigged for those at the top and rigged against the middle class. And as long as they insist on doing it, I'm going to keep taking actions on my own, like the actions I've already taken to attract new jobs, lift workers' wages, and help students pay off their loans. I intend to do my job. And if it makes Republicans in Congress mad that I'm trying to help people out, then I welcome them to join me so we can do it together.
All right, you have to be an idiot if you believe what the president just said. If Republicans don't want to help people out, I think a 5-year-old actually would go, what are you talking about? The economy shrank 2.9%, maybe not that, but they would certainly go and say, that's just, what a juvenile response. It doesn't make any sense. You're saying these things will create more problems for business owners. Business owners create jobs. You've got a problem creating jobs big time, and yet you're characterizing opposition to your plan as somehow they just don't like you. It's all about you. We'll get more into that because it has to be about him. President Obama must make it about opposition to him. It's not. It's the presidency. Abuse of the fact of overstepping his powers, going outside Article 2, going into Article 1 of the Constitution. Those are for Congress. Understanding and not understanding what our founders understood, direct relationship with the House, the people's house, the purse strings, our founders understood. People need the power of the funding. That's why in the lower house, arguably, in the sense of our bicameral Congress, we understand that the House is directly elected. The Senate used to be elected by state senators. Or state legislators, pardon me. And my only point in this, 18th Amendment, change that around direct election, but the overall point, follow this. It has to be about him and personally disliking him, which is not the case, rather than his behavior and his policies, because they're failures. And he's relying on you to have a very knee-jerk, he's a very low IQ. Sad. Crane Durham's nothing but truth.